Welcome to Newsline. I'm Cheeto Santos.
And I'm Anthony McPhee. Coming up on today's program, youth and mobile phones. Can they be dangerous? The growing tattoo trend and vinyl culture in Melbourne.
But first today, US President Barack Obama has delivered a landmark speech about the Arab Spring pro-democracy movement. President Obama urged global support for the region to move towards political and economic stability. He also said negotiations between Israel and Palestine have been made more urgent.
That is the choice that must be made. Not simply in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, but across the entire region. A choice between hate and hope, between the shackles of the past and the promise of the future.
And in local news, Malcolm Turnbull has put the cat among Liberal pigeons with his confession that he still harbours leadership ambitions. But how much traction is this issue getting out there in the community? Morgan Benson and Emily Baker quiz Melburnians today, an exercise that reveals quite a diversity of political engagement.
All right, so as a voter, if you're considering, who you might vote for to be the leader of the country, would you consider Malcolm Turnbull? Do you think he's a good choice?
Hell no.
Ultimately, yes. I think I just think Tony Abbott's too much towards the some lovely lady just put me off. So
I don't know very much about it, but I hope he has a great time doing it.
How would you feel about Malcolm Turnbull being the leader of the opposition?
Destabilising for the Liberal Party.
They've both got their flaws, they've both got their pluses. It doesn't really affect me too much.
I don't like the idea of changing often. I think that even if somebody's in a bad position, you should just let them keep going, because I don't think there's any confidence in changing regularly.
Personally, ever since I've started voting, I've always been very for the Greens and everything. So whatever happens sort of outside Labor, the Greens and what they want to do, I sort of don't really respect very much.
Who would you prefer as a choice? Who do you think you would vote for, given the chance?
I like John Howard. He was pretty good back at the time, but he's not around anymore.
No, he's not around anymore, unfortunately. So you'd say it doesn't necessarily make a difference to the party who's the leader, it's more policy?
Yeah, pretty much. They're both going to do bad things.
So that's politics from the street today. And now to someone who's actually into the news, we're joined by Simone Maisengab. Now Simone, the Murdoch media empire has come under fire recently from Greens leader Bob Brown. The political tit-for-tat continues in the press today. Can you tell us how this started?
Yeah, so it started at a press conference outside Parliament House yesterday. The hot topic of debate was, of course, the future timeline of a carbon tax. And when the media questioned Bob Brown about the finer details of the negotiations, he was said to have lashed out at the Murdoch press, calling them the hate media. He said that their negative reporting and unbalanced commentary was doing a disservice to the nation in what is perhaps the most important debate of the century so far, and that is, of course, how do we tackle climate change? Let's take a look at a grab from the conference yesterday.
We need news in our papers, but we're getting opinion far too much, and that needs to be debated, and nobody needs to get upset about it. But we're a free and open country, and let's have a debate about it. Let's have no topic put on the side for fear that it might be you might get clouded around the head politically about it. That's not what we're here for. We're here to get the best outcome we can for this nation.
Simone, how has the media responded to this?
Well, interestingly, the Herald Sun has printed a notice to their readers in the paper on page 10 today, saying that they make no apology for being at the forefront of this criticism. They've openly said that they are against a carbon tax and that they believe it is their job to question how much Australians are going to be taxed. Now, the editor-in-chief of The Australian has also come forward with a comment saying that they have been long-time supporters of a market-based mechanism to dealing with the climate change, and they would be happy to talk to Mr. Brown about his complaints.
On the topic of climate change, we hear the Baillieu government is considering a new scheme to help Victorians cut their electricity bills.
That's right. The Baillieu government is said to be considering a scheme where they will hand out standby power controllers. Standby power being the energy that appliances such as DVDs, radios, printers use when they don't shut down automatically. The scheme will work similar to the way that the government handed out energy efficient light bulbs in the past years. And standby power is said to cost the average household as much as $300 per year. So standby controllers are predicted to cut your standby bill by between $50 and $120. That's good news for Victorian households.
Certainly is. Thanks, Simone. Now, mobile phone users are getting younger and younger. These days, nearly every child over the age of 12 seems to have one. But what is it doing to their developing brains? Our report on the potential risks of giving a kid a mobile phone.
They're a distraction for both pedestrians and drivers, and they're a new way for the schoolyard bully to humiliate their victims. Australia has more than 20 million mobile phones in use. Unsurprisingly, with figures like this, researchers found nearly every Australian high school student has their own mobile phone. With phone use so widespread at such a young age, researchers have struggled to study the effects of their use.
We chose year 7 because we thought that that would be the age at which kids started to use mobile phones. Now, in fact, we were completely wrong. By that age, 94% of them had used a mobile phone and 77% had their own phones.
Dr. Michael Abramson is the Deputy Head of Epidemiology at Monash University. His team's research into the cognitive effects of mobile phone use by youths has uncovered some surprising results.
What we found was that the kids who used their phones a lot tended to be quicker at some of these tests, but they were also less accurate. And there's several possible explanations for that. Clearly the most disturbing potential explanation could be that the radio frequency energy from the phones is frying the kids' brains. Now, we never thought that was terribly likely because mobile phone handsets are quite tightly regulated so that they only emit very carefully controlled levels of radiation.
However, there are fears in the community that the radiation emitted by mobile phones hasn't been tested properly on kids. Professor Andrew Wood of Swinburne University has spent the better part of 2 decades researching the effects of mobile phone radiation. But he says there's been little research into the effects of mobile phone radiation on children and adolescents.
Certainly, society at large would demand that research is done on that particular group. It would be, remiss to just do adults.
The World Health Organization has identified children as a particularly vulnerable group to the effects of radio frequency energy.
The psychological effects of mobile phone use are much more immediate than the potential effects of electromagnetic radiation. Child experts say the distraction factor of having constant access to mobile phones can impair kids' learning.
Well, certainly they can be very engaging things that will take people's attention away from what they're otherwise focusing on. So yes, they can certainly distract young people from learning.
The ability of kids to capture and spread acts of schoolyard violence and bullying is also an area of concern.
And in a way, the communication technology is so flexible and allows quite a creative outlet in many ways. And again, unfortunately, that can be put to bad use as well as to good.
Scientists agree, however, that the most damaging effect comes when kids start to grow up and they combine mobile phones with another favourite toy.
There's no doubt that using a mobile phone, even a hands-free device, significantly increases your risk of having a motor car accident.
With the young P-Play driver already at a higher risk of being in a serious accident, the inclusion of a mobile phone can be a recipe for disaster.
And particularly when you're a new driver, it's more difficult. Driving's more difficult when you're new. It's less of a habit. It's less automated.
But even with all these risks, we can't stop young people from using mobile phones. Instead, psychologists say they must learn how to use them appropriately.
So I think we need to remember that this is a very new technology and it's not an essential technology, it's a convenience. And I think parents should probably let young people and their children learn about how to be responsible and be out on their own without this sort of technology so they know they can do it.
Mobile phones have changed the way kids are growing up. The challenge for parents is how to deal with these changes. Anthony McPhee, Newsline.
Thanks for that, Anthony. After the break, We know you can get sacked for planking on the job, but what effect can tattoos have on your employment prospects?